Thank you so much. I feel incredibly honored to speak to you today at Convocation. Thank you all for sharing this space and moment together. I'd like to start with a poem, and I always like to say this, and feel free to clap or snap or ooh and ah. You can even boo me if you want. Do as the spirit of poetry moves you to do. Everything's been said, but one last thing about the ocean. It doesn't love back. I watch two women on paddleboards balance the waves and their bodies, pushing through water to propel themselves forward. And it reminds me of high school science, when I learned about Newton's laws of motion, especially the third one. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. But I don't watch alone. In this coastal town, I eat lunch with two new friends, both artists. So we contemplate the existence of water sports. One woman on the paddleboard falls into the ocean and pulls the other in with her. They laugh, and so do we. But then we talk about trust, how unforgiving the ocean is, the water, and then what's beneath. How all week we've seen the sharp flag waving on the shoreline, or how we've been warned to never swim with the seals. And I confess, I can't swim. These are lessons my mother never taught me. Together, we've never been submerged in water. Or maybe we have, at the church baptism party, when we waded in the pool and the minister laid his hands on us, dipped us in the name of Jesus. I stopped wearing my gold flower earrings after that, the center emerald already missing from one of them. Then I threw away all my denim jeans and my Backstreet Boys cassettes. Everything has been said. But one last thing about faith. It's seeing the short flag and still jumping in. Or believing that a shell washed up on shore can hold all matter of good intention when placed on a bookshelf and then looked at from time to time. It's believing you will be dragged under by what's closest to you. You won't even see it coming. Thank you. People never know what to do when you read a poem. It's like, do we clap? Are we silent? I'm all about making noise. When people ask me about my poetry origin story, sometimes I forget that I once lived without it. As a 9-year-old girl, I started writing. My older sister gave me a journal for Christmas, and immediately I began filling the pages. At first, I wrote about the Backstreet Boys, obviously, and my school crush, then about sadness, about things I was taught not to talk about. I lived a childhood riddled with traumatic events, domestic violence, and sexual abuse. And I was raised in a strict religious system that discouraged open dialogue about these topics. Every aspect of my life was controlled, monitored, or regulated in some way. We lived by rules. These standards, as they were called, included some of the following: modest dress, women could only wear skirts, at least to the shin bone. Shirts had to be past the elbow. No makeup, no piercings, no tattoos. We were not allowed to listen to secular or worldly music, or even go to a movie theater. I was not allowed to talk to a therapist. And the idea of taking medication for depression or anxiety was inconceivable. After being deprived of any sense of personhood, my journal, my little diary, was all I had left. What I wrote in those pages couldn't be controlled. I came to NECO as a 16-year-old girl, fresh out of the small church school, not fully understanding the world I had left, the world I was in now, and the world that was inside of me. It was much like the Little Mermaid when she steps onto dry land for the first time and discovers she has 2 legs instead of a singular fin. I had so much to learn. At the beginning, I experimented with fiction and even journalism. Then poetry found me. Truly, it did. It was evident to my professors before it was ever evident to me. Even my biology professor could tell when my research paper sounded more lyrical than analytical. A poem was the perfect container to store these feelings until I could safely return to them. I didn't understand then how powerful poems could be. I didn't understand how important it was to share my story. What did a cult kid like me have to say? And who would even listen? My professors at NECO listened. Just to name a few, some of them are here: Carolyn Knopfler, Arian Jackson, Ken Thomas, Amy Callahan, Carol Barron, Linda Desjardins, Barbara Stack-Navich, Ginger Hewitt, Patrick Lawchelt, Paul St. Amon, and many more. My English comp teacher, Carol Barron, encouraged me to submit one of my essays to Parnassus, the literary magazine here on campus, which to this day Patrick Lawchelt still advises. I can still remember some of my first submissions to the magazine. And not gonna lie, they were a bit cringy. But nonetheless, a radical thing for someone like me who was so accustomed to being silenced. My psychology professor, Carolyn Knopfler, could see the pain beneath my perfect student exterior and asked the right questions, sometimes becoming the voice of reason in my indoctrinated mind. My literature of the short story professor, Michael, who couldn't be here today because of scheduling, but he let me turn in my own short stories instead of critical essays. I met Michael when I was 17, and for 17 years, he has been my writing mentor. He's offered immense support along my literary journey, from reading and discussing my poetry to writing letters of recommendation for just about anything I've ever applied for, which is a lot. 17 years worth. Most recently, he wrote a letter of recommendation when I applied for the Academy of American Poets Fellowship, which I was then awarded to continue building my work as Poet Laureate of Portsmouth, and for the purpose of enacting social change, all with the power of poetry. I was then 19 when Michael nominated me to be the student speaker at NECO's graduation, where I shared my story for the first time to hundreds of people. I remember I cried at the podium while delivering my speech, and those hundreds of people clapped. They had heard me. My story is not unique. It's not unique because I am not the only student NECO helped transform. I am not the only student who was guided into their own light to become something they never imagined possible. All of my siblings graduated from NECO. Now one sister is a nurse, the other a pharmacist, and my brother an accountant, and I a poet. As I mentioned, this isn't the first time I've had the privilege of speaking at NECO, and I know I will always keep returning, as one does to a place that has raised you. I can truly say, it's good to be home.